because apparently every day I'm told that this is straight out of the Russian playbook. I don't have the Russian playbook. I've studied the Russian military for 35 years. I spent a lot of time training to close with and destroy the Soviet military in combat. I think I know a lot about them, but I don't have their playbook. So I'm at a disadvantage, again, on that. What I can say is I come from the school of interaction with the Russians that uses the concept of trust but verify, meaning that I'm going to listen to what the Russians are saying, and I'm going to go with that until it's been shown to be otherwise. The Russians have said going in that they are not seeking to occupy Ukraine. And this is a huge fact that we need to focus on when we talk about the Russian operation. They are not there to occupy Ukraine. And the configuration of forces sustains this. Normal military math has attackers seeking a 3-to-1 advantage over defenders. So for every Ukrainian out there, you'd like to have 3 Russians lined up against them. The Russians brought together around 200,000 men, spread out over a wide area surrounding Ukraine. The Ukrainians had a standing army of 260,000, highly trained, well-equipped, well-led professional soldiers. And they were backed up by over 330,000 reservists and security forces, police forces, interior troops, etc. So Russia's going into this with a 1-to-3 disadvantage. That is, for every single Russian soldier out there, there's 3 Ukrainian defenders. Now, under normal circumstances, this would be suicide. But you have to listen to what the Russians said. The Russians are not engaged in a battle of territorial acquisition. Normally, when you seek to occupy somebody, you seek to seize territory, hold territory. The territory becomes important. Russia has 2 stated military objectives, the first of which is denazification. That is to destroy the military units that are aligned with neo-Nazi, ultra-nationalist political forces in Ukraine, units like the Azov Battalion, units like the Don Battalion, and others of that ilk. The Russians are seeking them out and destroying them on the field of battle as we speak. The second is demilitarization. That is, Russia has recognized that the Ukrainian military is a de facto proxy of NATO. It has been trained for the past 7 years by U.S. forces, NATO forces at training facilities in Ukraine, training facilities out of Ukraine to be interoperable with NATO, meaning that you can take a NATO-trained battalion of Ukrainian soldiers, unplug them from Ukraine, plug them into a NATO exercise in Germany, and they'll function seamlessly. They have the same command and control, the same training, the same tactics, etc. Russia views this as a proxy of NATO and has said this must be dismantled. Russia gave the Ukrainian military the opportunity to do this peacefully. Stay in your barracks. We're going to come in and we're going to get rid of all that NATO-provided junk that you were given. It's actually pretty good equipment. But I mean, that's the process of demilitarization. Or you can seek to meet us on the field of battle and we'll do it old school. And unfortunately for both sides, the Ukrainians have chosen old school. Now, what does old school mean? Let's come back to what I said at the beginning. This isn't the Iraqi military. This isn't a military that stood up the United States in 1991 and got destroyed on the field of battle, annihilated, and then spent the next decade plus unable to reconstitute itself because of economic sanctions, and therefore went up against the world's finest combined arms fighting force in 2003 with nothing, and still put up a pretty good fight, by the way. But my point is, the Ukrainian military is the exact opposite. These are highly trained, highly educated people who have been put through the ropes by their NATO trainers. There's an interesting slide that the Department of Defense put out there. It shows the NATO training facility in Western Ukraine that was bombed the other day. And it says, we train up to 5 Ukrainian battalions a year to NATO standards. And then they have a yellow arrow that goes over here and shows the Donbass so that they can fight the Russians over here. That's 40 battalions trained by NATO for the sole purpose of killing Russians in Donbass.
This is the base that's referred to kind of as an international peacekeeping center that was close to the Polish border, where possibly 100 foreign fighters from the so-called Foreign Legion were killed that you're referring to. But what Russia has maintained, and what was pretty apparent, was that this was a de facto NATO base inside Ukraine, which is technically not a member of NATO. So you're talking about de facto NATOization being the main factor in this war.
Absolutely, it's the ultimate objective. I mean, Russia. This war was predicated by NATO's appetite for Eastern expansion. The expansion eastward to include Ukraine. Russia has long said this is a red line. William Burns, the former U.S. ambassador, wrote a memo after the 2008 Bucharest conference that formally invited Ukraine and Georgia that said "niet means niet, no means no," and he accurately outlined the Russian objectives. He said these objectives actually are solid, meaning they're not fanciful. We have to take this seriously. And he said, and this was written, I believe, in February of 2009. He said, if we fail to respect the Russian position, they will eventually be compelled to take military action that will destroy Ukraine, and Ukraine will lose Crimea and the Donbass as a result. Now, this is before 2014, before the annexation of Crimea became reality, before Russian separatists decided to peel away the Donbass. In 2009, it was recognized that Ukraine has a Russian Achilles heel, the Donbass and Crimea, that it's going to lose if it tries to join NATO, and in the process, it will be destroyed. A U.S. ambassador who is today, by the way, a well-respected director of the CIA. So this isn't some has-been. This isn't Michael McFaul or somebody of this nature. This is a guy who still has cards in the game, chips. He's playing with real chips. Said we have to take this seriously, and we didn't. We expanded. No means no, and we're finding out what the Russian definition of no is today. And no is we're going to go in and we're going to denazify, demilitarize Ukraine for the purpose of achieving Ukrainian neutrality. which is the political objective, the ultimate political objective. Russia is winning this fight. People say,
I just wanted to share something before I toss to Aaron, based on your comments about the International Peacekeeping Center, which is obviously a ridiculous name for the base, but this is this is the International Peacekeeping and Security Center in Ukraine. Before Russia struck it, our colleague Alex Rubinstein tweeted this. Here's a Ukrainian soldier training with 2 American soldiers at the base, because it is effectively a NATO base, and they're both Black American soldiers. And the trainee geotagged himself Zimbabwe to mock the race of the Black soldiers, and then he posted 1488, referring to the 14 words of the dead American neo-Nazi David Lane, and 88, which stands for Heil Hitler. So this is kind of what's going on at the base, since you also mentioned denazification. Go ahead, Aaron.
Well, I have a clip I want to play of Zelensky talking about what you just talked about, Scott, and get your response to it. This is Zelensky on Sunday speaking to Fareed Zakaria, and he kind of gave away the game when it comes to the role of NATO expansion here. Listen to what he said.
Requested them personally to say directly that we are going to accept you into NATO in a year or 2 or 5. Just say it directly and clearly, or just say no. And the response was very clear. You're not going to be a NATO EU member, but publicly the doors will remain open. Requested them personally to take.
So just to repeat that, that's Zelensky saying that I asked NATO, presumably he means the US, for a direct answer on whether or not Ukraine will be admitted. And what he was told is that you will never join NATO, but publicly the doors will remain open. I'm wondering, Scott, your reaction to that.
Well, you know, this isn't the first time that this has happened. One goes back to 2008 and the decision by Mikhail Saakashvili, the president of Georgia, to launch a military incursion into South Ossetia, which from a Georgian perspective is a Georgian republic, and to return this territory to Georgian sovereign control. He had been in negotiations with the United States about this. Susan Rice, who at the time I believe was either the National Security Advisor or the Secretary of State, or not Susan Rice, Condi Rice. And from his perspective, he was told that the U.S. is going to be there for him, that NATO will back him. And he went in and found out the hard way that nope, they aren't there for you, and his military got smashed around a little bit, and it cost him a lot. He later humiliated Miss Rice in person when she came to visit, where he called her out. There's a videotape where he said, "You told me you'd be there. We went in because you told me you'd be there, and you abandoned us." And she was embarrassed by this. But the point is, why would Saakashvili believe this when there's no doubt in my mind that the U.S. said, we're not going to be there for you? Well, the reason why he believed that is because prior to this, the United States military was in Georgia training the Georgian military to U.S. and NATO standards. The Georgians were deploying forces into Iraq. In fact, when that war happened, they had an entire brigade of U.S. trained forces, their best forces in Iraq, that they had to bring back to try and defend Tbilisi if the Russians went on. They went into Afghanistan. Georgians have died in both conflicts. And the Georgians believe that we paid a blood price. And therefore, our fellow warriors who we train with are never going to abandon us. And that's not an unfounded thought. When you train this close, this intense with American service members, you get good ties with them. But these guys don't understand that the American service members have no say when it comes to policy. That they might be well-meaning when they talk about how there's a military brotherhood. They don't get to decide whether or not they go in and defend you. And there's no doubt in my mind that Zelensky was operating under the same thing, where his military guys were saying, "Man, we are so tight with the Americans. We train like this. We're brothers. And they're not going to abandon us. Our brothers would never abandon us. They told me we will be there for you." Zelensky went, "All right, let's push this thing. Let's let the Russians come in. Let's sucker them in, and then everybody will come to our assistance because that's what brothers do." Well, no, the military doesn't get to make the call. The politicians do. And Zelensky has learned the Saakashvili rule. Never trust the Americans, because the Americans will never be there for you. Something that Ashraf Ghani learned in Afghanistan as well.
But what is the U.S. NATO politicians' motive in saying to Zelensky, "You're never going to get in, but publicly we're going to leave the door open. Thereby, we're never going to agree to the key Russian demand that could have prevented this war"?
You just hit it on the head. We are not going to be seen as giving in to Russia. And now you ask yourself, well, isn't that sort of stupid to talk about tension in perpetuity? I think in 2019, Rand Corporation published a study that listed, I think, 7 destabilizing factors. Now, before I go into this, understand that Rand just doesn't gin up studies on its own. That's not how think tank business works. The think tank business works because somebody in the Department of Defense or the Department of State said, "We want you to write a study about a very pressing policy problem. How do we destabilize Russia? And so they wrote it and said, these are the top things. The number one thing, Ukraine. Number one, overextending, unbalancing Russia. There it is. And the number one thing on the list was Ukraine. Ukraine is the trap, so to speak. There's so many Americans today that think they can recreate Afghanistan in Ukraine, to suck Russia into a conflict in Ukraine that will destroy Russia the way Afghanistan destroyed the Soviet Union. Because at the end of the day, we need to understand that the policy of the United States towards Russia has been, since Michael McFaul became Obama's Russia expert on the National Security Council, regime change. When I say regime change, I mean get rid of Vladimir Putin. If you go back and take a look at the reset policy, remember that embarrassing red button that they pushed that spelled wrong, meant something totally different? That was about empowering Dmitry Medvedev, who had taken over as president from Putin. Putin had been relegated to prime minister because of constitutional issues. These idiots actually thought that Medvedev was a real president. And they thought that if they went in there and suddenly opened up the floodgates in terms of supporting Russia, doing what Russia wants, working with Russia, being a partner with Russia, that the Russian people would say, Dmitry Medvedev, who nobody knows anything about, by the way, just sort of thrown in here to be president, and everybody understood what the deal was. There's not a single Russian alive who didn't know what the deal was. But the Americans apparently didn't know what the deal was, and we were trying to empower Medvedev to stab Putin in the back. And we saw how that worked. When the time came, Medvedev saluted smartly, took 3 steps backwards, and Putin resumed his position as president of Russia. But Putin knew, because look at how mad the United States was. Hillary Clinton went on the offensive. Remember the election? I think it was December of 2011, where she was encouraging people to rise up in the streets to disrupt the election, to overthrow Putin. The United States was just furious about it. And what did this lead to? This led to Maidan. You say, well, that's Ukraine. Ukraine has always been the keystone to the American concept of destabilizing Russia. Ukraine has been the keystone. And you know what? You reap the wind, or you sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind. And we're reaping the whirlwind right now because Russia didn't take the bait, they reversed the bait. I mean, everything Russia's doing right now is a clear indication, at least from my assessment, that they have recognized this trap for years. And they have built the game, positioned themselves so that it's not them who have been sucked into a trap. It is NATO who sucked into a trap. You want to know the proof? Look at NATO's panic meeting today. Panic meeting. They talk about NATO unity. There is no NATO unity. NATO is a scared organization right now that doesn't know what to do. And then Russia just upped the ante, because this isn't just about the military. There's this whole economic aspect to it. Remember how Joe Biden bragged about staring Putin in the eyes? Remember the hardened killer that he was? And he said, if you invade Ukraine, we will impose the world's greatest stringent, massive economic program. And he sort of hinted at what they're going to do. We're going to cut you off from SWIFT. We're going to seize your assets. We're going to do all this. And Putin went, all right, thanks. Then Putin went back to Moscow and said, all right, we got their game plan. What do we do? And they built a game plan. And they just played a big card today. Did you see what Putin did?
He's declaring that the EU will have to buy gas and oil in rubles. And that is just massive. It's like, you will freeze if you don't buy it in rubles. And also,
you'll starve to death. Everything you think you enjoy in life, this wonderful Western lifestyle that you have, is gone. Goodbye, do svidaniya. Because once again, the Americans lied to Europe. Remember, I'm telling everybody, we got a plan, guys. We got a plan. Don't worry about gas. We'll get you all the gas you need. Don't worry about oil. We'll get you all the oil you need. And then when the time came, the Americans went, no, I'm sorry, we don't have a plan. There isn't any oil. There isn't any gas. America's running around right now, Operation Tin Cup, going on their knees to Venezuela. I mean, to Venezuela. The Nicolas Maduro, who we tried several times to overthrow with a coup, and then we embarrassingly appoint Juan Guaido as president. We then send James Story, the poor ambassador that's in the middle of this, crawling on his knees saying, we need your oil.
Yeah.
Maduro's considering right now, but he's not playing this game. Iran. This Iran nuclear deal was dead in the water. We weren't going anywhere with this. Sunset clauses, malign activity, ballistic missiles, all
worst
these
terrorists in the world.
You are the worst people in the world, the scum of the earth. We're never oil. Yeah, boys, let's lock this deal down. We're in. Yep. We're in, all in. You blew up a Saudi Arabia Aramco facility. Shame on you, but we're still in.
You and they're now saying they'll remove the IRGC from the State Department terror list. Amazing.
No, they're not terrorists anymore. Don't worry about it. We're honest because we need your oil. We don't have a plan B. Algeria, gas. No, they ain't selling gas. Nobody's selling gas. If they do sell gas, it's not going to be enough. Germany right now, I won't use the terms that I wanted to use. They're doing something to a brick. Okay, it's they're defecating a brick because they recognize that it's all over. France,
and what was the point of Scott? What was the point of sanctioning Russia's central bank if they're not going to be allowed to? If they're not going to be forced to default on their loans? Like, that's not happening.
We're the dumbest people in the world. That's why. I mean, literally, I can't think of anybody dumber than the head of the Office of Foreign Asset Control or the Sanctions Department in the Department of Treasury. First of all, they don't know anything about economists. These are people who are picked. All these people right now in the U.S. government that are advising Biden and company on Russia aren't Russian experts. That's the first thing we have to understand. We got rid of the last Russian experts years ago. We've replaced them with ideologues who have bought into this politicized notion of autocrats, of dictatorships. Look at I've studied the PhD theses of every single one of these idiots up there, and every single one of them are written about how evil Vladimir Putin is. You can't get into the U.S. government today, whether it's the CIA, the State Department, anywhere, unless you publish something that says Vladimir Putin is evil. If you've done this, you're brought into the club.